Hi, everybody, and welcome to the I Rock Knits podcast. This is episode 72, and my name is Corey Eichelberger. I'm coming to you today from Minneapolis, St. Paul area. I'm in a southwest suburb where it is kind of dreary this afternoon. Thank you all so much for your birthday wishes. I received hundreds of well wishes, comments, emails, DMs. It was just an amazing weekend for me. I can't even, I have so much to tell you. First of all, my parents came, and my husband told me, and my mom and my daughter both kind of wanted to keep it a secret, and so they were disappointed that I knew, but he said, I thought you would appreciate having some anticipation. And he knows that I usually work every day. Like, I'm always on the computer doing some type of work for my little design business. And so he thought it might be better if I could plan to have company and not get some other things done, which was true. So they came on Friday, and I hugged my mom so long. Yeah, it was just a really special time. They did drive up from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is about a 4-hour drive, and they stopped halfway and got out and stretched, and then they stopped again in St. Peter, for any of you who are from the area, and walked around at the gas station. It's a long trip. It's a long trip for two folks over 80 to make. And Mom said they were both much more tired when they got home than they expected, which I would have expected, because I'm tired after I go there for the weekend, right? It's kind of whirlwind, and you do a lot, and you sleep in someone else's bed. Oh, but it was lovely, just lovely to see them. Mom and I spent some time together. I took her to two places. She wanted to get a new purse, Vera Bradley, and she wanted to look for eyeglasses, just one stop each. But all the Vera Bradley stores in the Twin Cities have closed, which is kind of a bummer, except the Mall of America. So they don't carry them at the general store anymore, which is where we would have gone. And so I called the Mall of America and I said, which door do I bring her in? We want to come right in and go right back out. And that worked okay. We did do that. We couldn't get in on the second floor because they were having a vaccine clinic and the doors were locked. So we had to go down the stairs and crossed on one and fight our way through Forever 21, which is always a mess and packed with teenage girls and clothing, right? It's just congested. But we went up the escalator and we got her and took her about 15 minutes. She picked a new purse. She was tickled. She got a new wallet. My mom has carried Vera Bradley for years. They have great styles. And then we went right back out. And then we drove to an eyeglass place where we had an appointment on Hennepin Avenue. I had heard from some people that this Specs place had the most colorful and biggest selection in the Twin Cities. And a lot of the things are still boarded up on Hennepin Avenue and in the uptown area, kind of preventative for violence, but they have spray paint on the front, we're open and that kind of thing. But we had an appointment, so we had to knock at the door, and Mom has not had to do that. And she has never gone up to a business that had plywood over all of their windows. And so she was just shocked by, what precautions we're taking here and what it's like here in the Twin Cities. And this was all before the verdict came back for Derek Chauvin. And so I drove her when we got done down Hennepin Avenue into the uptown area and kind of showed her. And it was probably about 4:30 on Saturday afternoon, and there were all of the military people had come in on Saturday. They were expecting, some violence and things to happen. So they had brought in, and there were camouflage trucks and men with big guns on every corner, and she was just, I just had no idea that it was like this. And I said, well, they're trying to protect people's property, right? They're trying to make sure that the people coming from wherever, out of town and in town, are being controlled, in some way. So her eyes were just like this the whole time. That was super interesting. But she did find a pair of glasses. I found a backup pair of glasses. The gentleman that we worked with, when you buy glasses now, you don't get to look around. They bring them to you. So he asked us kind of what we were looking for, and I told him I really wanted orange frames. When we walked in, he had on an orange shirt and a blue blazer, and I was like, this is my guy, right? So I did find a pair of glasses kind of like this, more rectangular, but they have kind of the more clear plastic, the light orange, very light orange, and I'm trying to decide if I need that as a backup pair. These feel really in your face. To me, I know my orange and maroon ones from before were, if I remember, I'll put a picture in here so you can kind of remember, but they were darker. And these, when the light shines on these, they are hot pink. I know they look red to most of you, but they are hot pink. And so I'm getting used to them, looking in the mirror and being like, oh, they're so big and bold. So we did find glasses for Mom. She has to go get a eye appointment and get her eyes checked, but her other glasses had broken. She had a little like gold piece here, and it was super wobbly, and so they weren't staying on well, so she knew she needed a new pair. So we got those two things done, and then we went and got a cupcake for my birthday at Wolet's, that's right there on 50th and France, and so we brought cupcakes home, and then we found out it was Husband Appreciation Day, and so right away Mom said, I got to get a cupcake for Dad too. And I said, oh, Ross would never eat a cupcake, but he would have a chocolate chip cookie. So we did bring home little treats, and so then we acted like we knew it was Husband Appreciation Day for the men that we came home to. And we went out to dinner. We had to cancel a reservation downtown. We had planned to go to the Melting Pot to do fondue, and things were really iffy downtown. And the military was going to be there, and we just thought, two parents, both well over 80, we probably just shouldn't be in the downtown area if we don't have to be. So we went here somewhere locally that's very small and not a lot of people. It's Cast and Crew in the Lake Minnetonka area for anyone who is familiar. And they have delicious food. And then Kylie and Stevie met us, and then they hugged Grandpa and Grandma for the first time in a year. And it was just lots of tears. I've been shedding lots of tears. I think I'm just very emotional right now, and it was really special. But then, as some of you will know and some of you will not know, my friend Amber Lindemann, the yarn hoarder who does the photography for my patterns and is just been a dear friend for probably the last 5 years, drove 10 hours one way 10 hours on Sunday, spent the night in a town near me at a hotel, and then came out to surprise me on my birthday. And it was such a shock. So the reason that the Instagram Live thing moved to a Zoom and then to later in the day was kind of unbeknownst to me, but Kylie had said, hey, I had planned it for like 11, which I had said on the podcast, but then Kylie said, hey, can we push it back till 2, please? And I was like, okay, I can make that work. And then Amber texted and she goes, could we do 3 o'clock? And I was like, yeah, I can make that work. So then I changed it and we switched it to Zoom at 3 o'clock. So I apologize for those of you that thought it was going to be on Instagram at 11, but I didn't know that this stuff was going on behind the scenes, and it got a little crazy. And had I known that she was coming, and then I'll tell you what happened at lunch, but I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done a Zoom. The reason that I wanted to do an Instagram or a Zoom is because I just didn't want my whole day to go by with nothing, right? With just nothing going on. And Kylie had said, I'll take you for Taco John's. I'll drive out. We'll make that work. And then she came out at like 11. And she sent me a note, I'm on my way, I'm running early, I hope that's okay. And I was like, what's going on? And she got here and she came in the office. I'm like, hey, I'm finishing up a pattern. I do have some work to do. And she's like, okay, that's fine. And I turned and I looked out my window to my driveway, and this white car pulled up. And I said, oh, is someone pulling in the driveway? She goes, oh, I don't know. And then I looked down, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw Amber walking up the driveway, and I just started bawling. I just started crying, like my daughter and Amber and my mom, like people that have made me laugh and kept me sane during this pandemic. It was just so, I just went running and I'm yelling and hollering, and she comes in the front door, and I said, what are you doing here? And she said, well, I just decided So it all happened. Like, she kind of figured out on Friday that she could come. She and I have been talking about how we can get together with some friends. So we have a couple of different Zoom groups that we Zoom with, and we've been talking about, hey, let's plan something for this summer. When can we get together? Where should we go? What's halfway? Could we meet in Iowa somewhere? Could we meet in Wisconsin somewhere that's halfway? You know, who could get there? What size house would we need? Could we have 6 people? You know, we've just been talking about it. And then to her, I said, you know, it doesn't have to be on a weekend. Like, my work is every day, and you've got stuff going on. Like, RJ's graduating, RJ's having his last football game, RJ and Heidi are having their homecoming, they're having their prom, like, they're cramming all this stuff at the end of the year. And I just said, it doesn't have to be on the weekend. And she said, when you said that to me, you were just talking, but that's when it dawned on me that, hey, it doesn't have to be on the weekend. I could go on a Monday and a Tuesday and turn around and come back and not miss any of my kids' stuff. And so it was just, and then we tried to surprise people on the Zoom. So if you were on the Zoom early, you saw me get on, but we were setting up our chairs, and I usually let people into the Zoom, but this time I had set up a password. So I was like shocked that people were on already, because it was before 3:00 and we had just come flying home, and Amber was in the picture. So I said, no, you have to sit to the side. And we were trying to fit Kylie in. And then, so I turned us off, and then some of you were talking, and then someone said, hey, let's share where we found, which was so nice, because behind the scenes, we were trying to get the chairs and everything set up so that I could start talking and then say, and look who's here. And the whole thing was just kind of a hot mess, but I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad you could see it. And I did decide to record it. The problem with doing it on Instagram, and you may have seen this, is that Instagram Live has some glitches, and it doesn't always record and save. And I have lost an Instagram Live, and I've seen other people who said after the fact that they lost, like I saw Chantel last week lost her Instagram Live that she tried to repost for people. And so I just knew that Zoom hasn't had that issue. They just don't mess up, and I could record it, and then other people who couldn't be there, because I was never going to pick a time when you all could be there. I mean, it's just never going to happen, right? I had people in Scotland and in the Mediterranean and in New Zealand and in the U.S. on both coasts. Like, so I'm just so glad that worked out. But what happened was Kylie had made a reservation, and she said, Mom, we can't go for tacos. You need to pick somewhere in Eden Prairie, because then I need to pick something up. And I was like, okay, I'm going along, right? I wanted to go to Taco John's, but that's fine. So we picked a local restaurant, and I drove, and we're just chatterboxing away, and we pull into the parking lot, and I'm like, oh, there's spots down there, and then there weren't. So I drove all the way down the parking lot and came all the way back around and pulled into this spot. And my dear friend Julie came walking up to the car, and I was so shocked. So Julie is the woman who I met my first day of teaching out of college at my first job. We walked in as first year teachers on the same day, and we sat in the elementary school library at these little tables on these little chairs, and I said to her, hi, I'm Corey, and I'm Julie, and I said, my first job, and she said, me too, and I said, where are you living? And she said, you got the last apartment in town, which I did. There was only like a 8-plex in town, in this tiny little town we were teaching in, and there was only one apartment left, and it was a 2-bedroom, which I didn't want, but it was the only place to live. And so she said, I'm living in a trailer over on the other side of town, and there's mice. And I said, do you want to move in with me? Like that. Like, we spoke for a few minutes, and I said, why don't you move in with me? I have 2 bedrooms. And so the principal got his pickup truck. She had just moved in the previous week, and he moved all of her stuff up to and then we lived together for 2 years and became dear friends, and we did all the activities at the school together. I've told you all that I was the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade English teacher, and I did the yearbook and the newspaper, but I also did the school play and taught some dancing classes and taught gymnastics after school, and we did the cheerleaders together, and we just did all of it. We would ride to school together, and we would go to all the football games together, and And then she stayed. I got married 2 years later. I got married, moved to the Twin Cities, and then she stayed down there for 3 more years. And then she moved up here, and now she is married and has lives in Elk River, which is way north of the Twin Cities, and I'm way southwest. She is on the west side, but it's a good hour drive, and so we don't get together very often. But as soon as we do, we just catch up. And Amber had never met Julie, and she says, "Oh, I know who you're talking about." And then Julie hadn't met Amber, and then they're both very kind, loving people, so I knew that they would get along, and they both put up with me. And we just had this lovely lunch. But then we had to pick up something and get home by 3 o'clock for the Zoom, which I did not know. And so we could have talked all afternoon, the 4 of us. I mean, it would have just been, Kylie has always called Julie Aunt Julie. And it was great. So I shouldn't belabor the point here. Anyway, we went and got Buntinis. Hey, bud. And which is in Eden Prairie. It's a little buntlet light cake. They have different sizes and all the different flavors, and Kylie had ordered a variety pack, so I got to try a bunch of different flavors, and it's kind of like a little cupcake, but easier to eat, I think, with cream cheese frosting on them. And we had red velvet and chocolate chip, and we had swirl chocolate. I mean, and they're my favorite treat, and they do have gluten-free, which is why we found them and we got them. But then we had to race home, so we came flying in the door at like 5 to 3, and I wanted to stop at the gas station and get a pop because I told everyone that I would have a pop for the party. Then we had our treats. So it turned into a whirlwind day, and I know several of you said you were sorry you missed it, but it is there for you to watch. It's on my YouTube channel. It's right after the episode last time. It'll come up. So you will all see it, and I have it written in the front, Zoom birthday party. And those of you who did show up just made my day. I tried to say hello to every single person, but you know how on the screen you have to look and make sure you're catching people, and then people talk and the squares can move around. So I hope that I said hello to all of you. Someone decorated her background to look just like my background. People brought things that they had knit. Deb had on her Nice Capade sweater that she knit. That's one of my designs. Like, people were really willing to celebrate with me. And I just felt super blessed at the end of the day. It was super fun. Also, I have always wanted Amber to teach me how to make noodles because I've never made noodles before. And she makes noodles all the time. She has a recipe called Chicken and Noodles. And we will often chat once or twice a week. And we'll get carried away and we'll talk kind of up till that supper hour, and then I'll say, "What are you making?" And she'll say, "I don't know, what are you making?" Or she'll say, "I'm making chicken and noodles," and I'll say, "We're having stir fry," or whatever. And so I've said to her, "I'm going to have you set up your iPad sometime and you're going to show me how you make your noodles." And she's like, "They're so easy, it'll take me 5 minutes." I'm like, "Not if you've never made them before. I don't even know how to do it. I don't have a pasta roller thing," whatever. And she's like, "Oh, you don't need them," or whatever. So Tuesday I said to her, "Would you teach me how to make chicken and noodles?" So we spent the afternoon just, making sure that I had what we needed, and then putting chicken in the crock pot. Just doing some things around here. And then she I really do want to learn. So she taught me how to make noodles, and it's just, eggs and flour and water and salt. Like, it isn't hard, and we rolled them out, and then she told me how to cut them and then flour them and put them. I put a post up in my Insta stories of her just showing me that process a little bit, how it works, and then it was delicious. It was really good there. The noodles were, I just love a good good carb. Anyway, so that was super fun. And then she stayed on Tuesday, and we ate supper together, and then she got up and left and drove back on Wednesday. She left early, as soon as we got up, she got on the road, and then she drove 10 hours back home. So Literally, she drove 20 some hours and was here for such a short period of time. And what a gift. I mean, it was a very generous thing to do for that kind of a turnaround time. And I had the best time. No one makes me laugh like my daughter and Amber. And I am not a laugh out loud person all the time when I watch movies or shows on TV. But I will giggle and start laughing, and that is so good for my soul. And that is what I had. I started giggling. I'll have to ask Amber what we were talking about on Tuesday night, and I couldn't catch my breath. I was laughing so hard. It was just, considering that I thought my 60th birthday was going to be a real, just kind of a drudge, right? That Ross and I will go out to dinner. We'd probably see Stevie and Kylie, hopefully, and then that would be it. And I tried to make it into something a little more special. It just turned out to be amazing. So thank you all for your well wishes. I really appreciate it. So many of you thought that my story last week with my Bagalini bag, you thought it was poop. So I almost was going to name this podcast, You Thought It Was Poop. Instead of the name of the shawl and the sweater. But anyway, it was not poop. I knew it wasn't poop. I would never pick up poo and put it in the bag because there are garbage cans at the dog park, and so when you're walking you can just dump it in. So I knew that the smell was chemical. But so many of you commented, I thought for sure you were going to say you had a poop bag in your bag, and I was like, no, that would not be the case at all. Okay, I have to make an error announcement. Last week on the podcast, and a couple people pointed it out to me. When I read the pattern information off a pattern page, I print out the front page of the Ravelry. And then I look over here to see like how many projects and stuff, but it was not, it prints out over here down in the corner. And I'm not going to explain it to you. I read the wrong thing. The Summerfly shawl has not been made 100,000 times, and the Autumn Flutter shawl has not been made 100,000 times. That's how many times that yarn had been used in a project, and I just read it wrong. I'm just looking down, and then I got shocked. It should have dawned on me in the moment, but sometimes my mouth is moving and my brain is not engaged. And if you have not learned that coming to this podcast ever 2+ years, you know it now. My mouth can be moving and my brain cannot be engaged. So I apologize for that. For those of you who are like, what is she talking about? That's what I did. I just read the wrong thing about the number of projects that were made, and it wasn't going to, affect anyone too detrimentally, I don't think. And a couple of you reached out. You were kind. But we have to remember the way you should always read your comment out loud and say, how is this person going to take it? Okay. My knitting group had a little birthday party for me the Thursday before my birthday, because we knit on Thursdays on Zoom, and I set that up. And they came to group with party hats on, some of them. And I was like, what are they doing? And then I said, Mary Brown, what do you have on your head? And she's like, oh, not, and there were quite a few people on the screen, and it didn't come out until a couple of minutes. And they had delivered a Taco John's gift certificate to me and put it on my front step. I have to thank Janet. She has just recently rejoined our group because she retired, and we knew her from before, but she is a dear, and I'm so glad to have her back in my life. She is the kindest person. She and I have done some text messaging, and she just rounded up the people and said, hey, we should have a little party for Corey, which is super nice. Because we don't always have birthday parties for people in our knitting group. We always send cards or that kind of thing, or bring a card for people. But yeah, sometimes we would bring treats. Super nice of Janet. I got some little knitting gifts, and it was very nice. Anyway, and then I got a birthday card from my brother. I don't get birthday cards from my brother, because we also in this family believe that if you are going to be wasteful of something, that you should not. You should try not to be wasteful. So Ross and I have been doing a lot more around the house with plastics. I told him, you can't open a bottle of water every day and like you would downtown. You're at home now, you can fill a water bottle, and things like that, like just little things. And birthday cards are paper and expensive, right? And so when I opened up this card and I first started reading the first paragraph, there was no return name on the card, just an address, and I didn't really look at it that closely, and I had gotten quite a few birthday cards in the mail. I start reading it. I think it's from a viewer because it says something about, I was remembering a time and thank you, and I was like, what? And then I flip it open and it's from my brother Jeff, and he wrote me the nicest card. I don't even know that I can explain to you the relationship that I have with my youngest brother, and how that has kind of gone away over the years. I don't have a super close relationship with my brother who's closest to me. We make each other bristle a little bit. But Jeff and I he's 8 years younger, and we were very close when he was growing up. And I never got to live in the town I grew up in. I never went back. And so I always felt like they had the best of mom and dad, being with grandpa and grandma, getting to go to all the other cousins' activities and all the other things. And that's my perspective. And then from their perspective, they're thinking, hey, she lives in the big city. She's got all the access to these things that are going on up there. And we have to drive to go to Minneapolis. So I just always felt it, not that it's been super hard, but I lived away from Minneapolis too. I lived in Virginia, and he wrote the nicest note, and he knows that because I texted him, but he watches the podcast, and that meant a lot. I have close friends who don't watch the podcast, and I put a lot of time and energy into it, and I said to my mom and dad, do you guys ever think about watching? And they're like, no. And I think my mom misses me desperately, hears me talking for 2 hours every week, but Jeff watches. He likes the recipes and he likes the books. We've always shared books. I will read something really good and I'll say, hey, I think you would like this. And he'll say, yeah, I read that. Just common, right? When people are readers, it's hard to recommend books because they've read all the good stuff. They've read the popular or the good. And so it just meant a lot. And so I want to say, hi, Jeff. And I may say hi, Jeff, on every podcast, just to remind him that I love him. And his wife Sherry and their son Ian, their whole family. I don't mean to leave anybody out because I love them all. It just, for a guy who does not knit to watch his sister talk about, her knitting love and her life and things that she does on a podcast. Yeah, just meant a lot. Wow. Told you guys I was emotional. I think what happened on my birthday is that my extrovert self got filled up by people, right? I have done a pretty good job of being able to stay upbeat and happy, even though my love language, my soul is filled by talking. And there are a lot of people in my life who have to put up with a lot of talking from me, like my knitting group, many of whom are introverts. Kylie, Ross, they're introverts, and things come out my mouth and I need other people to fill me up in that way. That I will never be able to change that. It's who I am. It's how I process. It's how I love. And being with the people filled my eyes. No, it filled my soul, right? As an extrovert, I have not been with people in so long. And I know there's some introverts out there that this quarantine, other than that it was a worldwide pandemic, was not that hard, right? They're like, oh, hallelujah. I do not have to go out and be with people, talk to people, go to things and functions that they don't want to, that gave them like a break. But for someone like me to be home, and especially because Ross worked at the beginning of that, I was just doing all the Zooms. I set up Zooms to try to chat with people. And then I found my niche, which is just completely covering myself in design work. And I have done that, right? It's been a coping mechanism. I have way too many projects on the needles, way too many designs in progress, way too many feelers out there from yarn companies, but it keeps me really busy all day. And that is how I've stayed sane being here in this quiet house by myself with the dog and not going out. Okay, we're 30 minutes in. This is a knitting podcast. Let's talk about knitting. What am I wearing? I'm wearing my new design. This is the Pippin Poncho, and it came out with Knit Circus yarns on my birthday. It is super fun to wear. It drapes super well. This is not your typical poncho because of the open work. It goes on, it's light, it's airy. It has two rectangles. You make two rectangles, and it's a 2-row repeat for the whole thing. So you can do this while you're watching TV. You can do this when you're at knitting group. You make one rectangle that goes this way, and then you make another little rectangle that goes this way, and then you just stitch them together, or you can pick up stitches and 3 needle mind off that if you would prefer not to just sew those two. You have to seam from here to here and then on the back, so it just goes across. But the way it sits on your body is just so comfortable. And Amber tried it on the Zoom that we did, and when she got in the mail, she was like, oh, I don't know. She got 3 projects from me, and she was like, what a poncho, right? And then she put it on. She's like, I would wear this. And she tried on this size, and Amber is bigger busted than I am. I'm not small busted, but it just drapes really well. So this is the original Pippin Poncho that I've had for 11 years, I think. And I can show you that piece here that goes the other direction. Okay. And I knitted out of this yarn that is no longer available, but it was wrapped threads around cream yarn with colors in it. And when springtime comes, I can put on any t-shirt in my closet, any tunic. I like to wear these plain colored long tunics that cover my, my bits. And then when I go out the door, I can throw this on over the top. And it can be like a jacket, but it doesn't get in the way at all. It doesn't hang and, it's not around you that way. And it's super fun to knit. So here's the yarn that I chose from Knit Circus. It's DK. It takes 3 or 4 skeins for all 3 sizes. There's a small, medium, large, extra large, 2X, 3X. It's really hard to size a poncho because there's no bust, right? It's wide open here. So any size would fit anyone. So what you can determine is how long you want it to hang down. So like Amber could have made it shorter because she's shorter than I am, or someone could make this piece longer, and you can try it on as you go. And there are instructions in the pattern that just say, drape this over your shoulder now and see if it's hanging, how far down you want it. Otherwise, do another few repeats. Super simple because there are only 2 rows. But this is the yarn I picked because I wanted it to have that same feel as this one. It not be black, but to have the colors in it, right? So that you could put it on with anything and it would match. So that is kind of a neon yellow in there, but then all the other colors are the colors that, I love. The raspberry and the blue and the purple. And that's kind of color tie-dye shirt I have on underneath here today, which is a tunic. But Knit Circus made up kits. So if you go to knitcircus.com, because you don't have 3 skeins of DK in your stash, they have kits for this. You can buy any 3 skeins of their yarn, but they have some suggestions for ideas for this poncho. So you can go over there. If you've never knit with Knit Circus yarns, it's lovely. They have the skeins that are kind of gradients within one giant skein. And so you can get all the beautiful colors in one skein. So it can go from red to blue to purple, or blue to green to gold, or whatever in a skein. And that would be lovely too. You could do an actual fade on this. That would be pretty to do. So lots of options. You can use any DK weight yarn you want. It depends on how much yardage is in your skein. But this would be fine done in a solid. So you could get it done for quite inexpensively. 3 skeins of GK you can buy, at Nitpicks or Webs and get it for cheaper if you're on a budget. But if you have a little extra money and you want to splurge for my birthday, then I highly recommend the Knit Circus yarns because it's just super fun. And Amber took the pictures, and Bianca was our model, and Bianca is Amber's niece's best friend. They are best friends. So I had Heidi, Amber's daughter, and then Hannah, her niece, and Bianca do the Knit Words book for me. So they modeled for the Knit Words book, and then we got Heidi and Hannah back when we did the plaid blankets and the tacos hat and cowl and the dog words hat and cowl. We did them together again, and Hannah's boyfriend Jake. And then so this one I said, let's use Bianca again because we just used those girls, and so we used Bianca for the 3 designs that I have coming out right now. So Pippin, Pippin Poncho is this one. Okay, what's next? Let's do the audiobooks of the week. I have 2 for you this week because I missed one a few weeks ago. The first book I read was The Woman Who Smashed Codes. This was a book club book, and we discussed it the Monday that I recorded last time, and I wasn't quite done. I had, half an hour left. A true story of love, spies, and the unlikely heroine who outwitted America's enemies. This is not a book I ever would have picked up, I don't think, but fascinating. So this is a researched book like Hidden Figures and In the Garden of Beasts, those books where they just do tons of research and then they actually write the story. In 1912, at the height of World War I, brilliant Shakespeare expert Elizabeth Smart went to work for an eccentric tycoon on his estate outside Chicago. The tycoon had close ties to the U.S. government, and he soon asked Elizabeth to apply her language skills to an exciting new venture, code breaking. There she met the man who would become her husband, groundbreaking cryptologist William Friedman. Though she and Friedman are in many ways the Adam and Eve of the NSA, Elizabeth's story, incredibly, has never been told. Her husband got all the credit. They called him when they needed someone, and if he was busy, then they would call Elizabeth. And they worked together on these codes. It was a fascinating story. My friend Carla lives in Geneva, and that's where the tycoon that they go to live with lives. And I called her or texted her and I said, I'm sure you've read this book, but I'm finding it fascinating that this man had an estate in your town and I had never heard of it. And she said, oh, absolutely, everything's named for him here. Everything is named. This book, although I listened to it on audio, goes through a lot of the code breaking stuff, and so the audio narrator had to read all the codes, AABB, AAA, BBA, and the people who read the book for book club said that they could just skip over how the codes were done, but in the audiobook she had to read them. So I had to fast forward fairly often when they were in the code breaking stuff. So I'm not sure I would recommend the audiobook. I mean, it was very well read. It's just there were parts that were hard to listen to because it got very mathematical, and if you were reading, you would have just skipped it, right? You would have been like, oh, this is a whole complex equation. I don't need to read it to understand how it looks. So that was interesting. But my friend Carla said, everything in Geneva is named after Fabian. So she said even the popcorn store is Colonel Fabian. And that they have a big, huge park where all the land where he was, I think it's a state park, and there was, mansion, and there was a tower. I think there was a windmill. He paid people to live and stay there if they were researching something that he was interested in. So if you had a, brain scattered idea about something, but he was interested in it, you could go and live there and stay there and research it. And he was, providing the financial means for people to do that, which is fascinating to me. I would love to go and take a tour or find out more about what that was like. But anyway, these two people lived with him, and then they tried to get away from him, and he didn't want to let them go, and then they eventually did, and they moved to Chicago by themselves. But she was super smart. It was a fascinating story. If you are into kind of women getting their just due, then I would highly recommend the book. Most people at book club said they found it fascinating. They thought it was really interesting. Okay, the second book I read is called The Book of Lost Friends by Lisa Wingate. And I can't believe I forgot to tell everyone about it. I wrote myself a note because I went back to look up a book, and I was like, oh, I never talked about that one on the podcast. So this is one of those books that takes place in 2 time zones, 1875 and 1987. And it goes back and forth between the present day and the past. And it is basically a story of a young woman who finds out the story of the history of the area that she's in. Excellent book. Really well done. Here it says, in the tumultuous era of Reconstruction, 3 young women set off as unwilling companions on a perilous quest. Hanny, a freed slave, Lavinia, the pampered heir to a now destitute plantation, and Juno Jane, Lavinia's Creole half-sister. Each carry private wounds and powerful secrets as they head for Texas, 1875. Then, 1987, for the first-year teacher, Benedetta Silva, a subsidized job at a poor rural school seems like the ticket to canceling her hefty student debt until she lands in a tiny, out-of-step Mississippi River town. Augustine, Louisiana, is suspicious of new ideas and new people, and Benny can scarcely comprehend the lives of her poverty-stricken students. So she moves to this town to teach. First-year teacher, which of course I loved, how challenging that is when you're trying to figure it out. And then her students are so poor, and she makes a number of missteps, and is renting the only house in town that was available that's kind of falling down. And there's a family that owns the town, which is super interesting, because I think in a lot of small towns that's very true. They don't own it, but they're like the biggest, producer, or they're the biggest employer. Like in the town that I lived in, there was a printing company, and they employed tons of the people that lived in the town. So they were kind of, Phi Industries was the industry to work for if you wanted the best job that you could get in a rural farming community, kind of a thing, right? So I would highly recommend this. It was just really well done. I'm really liking this Lisa Wingate. I'm going to have to read some more of her stuff. I've read a couple now, and I just think that they're really well done. The recipe of the week this week. This is what I'm going to make for lunches this week. I was going, I cleaned out my recipe files and threw away a lot of stuff. But I'm going to make ramen noodle salad, and I think many of you will have had this. But if you don't have the recipe, or you've never heard of it, you haven't made it before, this is the one where you break up the ramen noodles and you don't cook them, and you just eat them for the crunch, kind of like a chip in a, Dorito or something. So it's a package of coleslaw, 2 packages of ramen noodles, slivered almonds, sunflower seeds, some scallions to taste. And then you brown the ramen noodles in a pan or in the oven, either way, 375 degrees with a little brown butter. Then you make the salad dressing, cup of oil, pepper, white vinegar, sugar, and you can add whatever else you want to this kind of salad. So we add like shredded chicken, and it sells here in our fancier grocery store, Byerly's. So I will often just buy it at Byerly's, the ramen salad, because I don't want to make it, but I am going to make it for my lunches this week because it's one of my favorites. I really like it in the spring and summer. I like it when the chicken is warm, so I've just shredded the chicken and then I throw it on the salad. But if you've never made it before, I just think it's such a treat. Little coleslaw, lots of crunch, and then warm chicken and a little dressing. Yeah, it's really good. It's not one of my husband's favorite. He is not a fan of cabbage. I will often buy the broccoli slaw that they have that's already shredded in the grocery store, and then add some other things or put some shredded carrots in it so that it's not so cabbagey. But it's not cooked cabbage. It's, raw cabbage. and I don't think it has a taste, but he doesn't. It's not his favorite. He might eat some, but probably not. Okay, I have a little update on the knitting exchange. I have just sent out an email to several podcasters in my area. I have a few more to send, asking them to please shout out the knitting exchange. We had a bunch of people early on putting up projects. People were going over and looking. A lot of those projects got sold, gifted, traded away, and there are just a couple in there. But I want this to become like an ongoing thing that people go to. So I need people to find out about it. If you could tell a friend, if you could follow it on Instagram, or go over and join the group on Ravelry so that maybe occasionally you would remember to check that. There are a couple items out there that have been sitting there for a while, and I think it's just because they don't have eyes on them yet, and I have been swamped with other stuff and I have not been putting the time or energy into the knitting exchange that I should, to kind of get it going and get enough followers to kind of help it perpetuate. So I'm hoping, I think I sent to maybe 7 podcasts with big followings to say, hey, would you want to just talk about this on your podcast so we can get the word out? Because there's nothing in it for me. Like, I'm not making any money. There's no business here. It's all just an idea, but it'll never work if there aren't enough people involved to kind of, put new projects up. So do any of you have something that's in a bag somewhere that you're never going to finish that you could post over there? It takes about 3 minutes to put your picture up and say, this is what I'm willing to give away, sell, or trade. And that would really help kind of generate some more interest too. Okay? All right, I have a little tip or trick this week. A friend in my knitting group will often send us out things that she finds on the internet that are related to knitting. So Judy Berland sent this to me a while back, and I was like, oh yeah, I totally do this. But I kept the note in my podcast file, and I thought, I need to share that. So it is a YouTube video that shows you how to tighten up or fix your ends when you're done knitting in the round, so that your first stitch is slanted over to this way and your last stitch is ending like this, and you don't have the skills to fill the gap there to kind of make it a stitch. You take your chibi needle or your tapestry needle after you've bound off your last stitch, and you go under the 2 strands on the left, and then you bring it and you go down into the hole of the last thing you just knit, and it will make the loop complete. It's a 3-minute video on YouTube. Is the way I do it when I have to close things up. I thought it would be helpful for some of you. So if this intrigues you, then I will have it linked in the show notes underneath in the down box, as well as over on Ravelry. Take a look at it. But it's on YouTube, and it's called The Last Stitch of Your Bind Off in the Round. So if you just Googled that on YouTube, it should come up too. It's 3 minutes, and it's a really slick way to make the beginning, so you can't even hardly tell where you started or ended anything that you've knit in the round. So if you don't have that skill yet, it's a good one. It's a good one to learn. Okay, I have a new pattern this week. I have a pattern coming out this weekend with Toad Hollow for Maryland Sheep and Wool. And many of you remember that last year I did the Hi-Ho Shawl for Maryland Sheep and Wool. It was the first year that they had a virtual event, and it went really well, and Toad Hollow had kits. And so this year, when I was collaborating with some people, one of the things that I said to Toad Hollow was, would you want to do another shawl for Maryland Sheep and Wool? And they said yes. And I said, I don't really want to design another fingering weight shawl with minis, because that's what I did last year, and then it could end up looking kind of the same, or how many fingering weight shawls with minis do we need? So I said I'd really like to switch it up. So I did a DK weight shawl, and this is the shawl design that I came up with. This is called I Will Sit With You. And the pattern is going to be out on Tuesday. I will send out a newsletter Monday night, and give a coupon code will be available to anyone who's already subscribed to my newsletter on my website. So if you're not, you should go over and put your email address in there. And then the ladies will be having the show on next weekend during Maryland Sheep and Wool to kind of show it off and to do some of their publicity. I use the Alice in Wonderland colorway. It is a collaboration for them with Alice in Wonderland, and I use the Alice colorway. This is my mother's favorite color, baby blue, and I just thought they sent me several tonal yarns to try as well as a variegated. I think it would work up in a variegated, but there's quite a bit of little tiny lace stitches going on in it, so the lace might get a little hidden. Let me show you. Here is the romance copy at the beginning of the shawl pattern. When my daughter was a small child in elementary school, she would come home from school and say, "Susan said this," or "Susan did that." And I would say, "Who's Susan?" And she would tell me, "I sit with her at lunch." So one day I decided to investigate by peeking into the lunchroom at her school, and there sat my daughter at a special table with Susan, who was in a wheelchair and had a lot of trouble eating. I left quickly, but later I asked her, "Tell me about Susan." And her reply was, "No one will sit with her, so I do." Ah, from the mouths of children come the best lessons. Let's practice this together. I will sit with you. In a great effort toward inclusion and making sure that we include people, I wanted to make a little bit of a statement with this shawl. And it is very, very visual. So the first part of the shawl starts here with long tables of knitters sitting and knitting. So we have, just imagine a school lunchroom or an event where people are sitting at long tables, and that's from overhead, we're looking at the tops of their heads. And so you start down here, and it's stockinette, and it just has a little bit of a flat I-cord edge on either side. Super easy to do, knit, slip, knit. And then you just knit a few, and you go back and forth, and this yarn over knit two together, knit one, yarn over knit two together. Nothing you can't do. So then we go into tables of 4 knitters sitting together. And we've got knitters at a knitting retreat who have broken out into smaller groups, and they are 4 people at a table. So I have a picture in my mind of looking down at the table, and that grows. So this section grew just a little bit, and then this section grows just a little bit. And then we go to the center where I have the V's of people going together and then going into a little table of 4. So we come down here, and then when we get to the bottom, there's just this little table of 4. So we have people that might not know each other or have never known one another, and they get to an event and someone invites them to the table, and they come to the table and they sit. Often when I go to a knitting retreat, and I know that there will be people who are people who have gone to ZK, Zombie Knitpocalypse in Rochester, I will go around a room and say to people, "Hey, do you want to come sit with us? You're sitting by yourself. Hey, come over and sit with us." And I do know that if you are an introvert having your quiet and down time at a table like that having an extrovert like me come over and be like, "Come on and join us," is not the most comfortable thing in the room. But if you were sitting alone and you had not been asked to sit with someone, I would rather be in your face than to let you sit there by yourself and not be included in the group or not be included in any group. So I am an obnoxious gatherer of people. I get people together a lot and try to say, "Come on, sit with us." This shawl means a lot to me, and I'm hoping that it really is a visual for you too. So then you finish that little section. They're yarn over knit two together the whole way, each one of these little holes. And then you come back and you're going to do 4 people together again, and then you're going to end up with long tables. So it's a mirror image of the other side, and there is a halfway point. If you want to make the shawl longer, this section right here is stockinette, and you can add rows in this section in the pattern. And at the bottom, it does not reach a point. Can you see? It just scoops down, because this section where the V is at, that is a flat flat across section. So it goes straight across right there. So it's easy to add length if you want it to be longer than what it is. And you can also weigh your yarn and see if you are at 50% of your yarn or not at that point. The tassels are completely optional. This is exactly how much yarn I had left of my 2 skeins, which is 250 yards in Toad Hollow DK. And I just decided that I have a shawl that has tassels on it, a little smaller than this, but I love how it weights it down so that when I put it on, those tassels will hold it here if I wanted it to, or if I wrap it around myself here, the tassels can, hold it down. The pattern would be lovely done up in any of their tonals. It could be done in a variegated, like I said. This is not lace knitting where you've got a ton of things going on. Every time you get to one of these, you do yarn over knit together, yarn over knit together, knit 6, right? Like you're going back and forth this way. And so it's super simple. Everyone who knit it said that it went really quickly, faster than they expected. And if you think about that, how quickly could you knit up a skein of DK weight yarn, right? It's 250 yards. I can, on a good day, if I have a lot of knitting to do, I can knit 200 yards in a day. So you could really get this done quite quickly. So we've got something fast, we've got something easy, and we've got something meaningful. And to me, that just kind of brings it all together. I would like to think that if someone saw you wearing this shawl, they would be comfortable coming up to you at an event and saying, "May I sit with you?" Because they would know that you are a person with an open heart that would allow anyone to join them. So I hope that it brings as much joy to all of you as it brought to me. The final length of the shawl is about 58 inches, so just short of 6 feet. It could have been blocked a little harder if you wanted to block it a little harder, but like I said, you could make it longer or shorter if you like. I think you all know that Toad Hollow has recently come up with a bunch of new colorways, so I think there are lots of options for you to get this. They are always willing to do a custom order for you of any of the colors that they have in their store, and they usually turn that around fairly quickly. So I will sit with you, Shawl. The quote that I found is, "When you can't look on the bright side, I will sit with you in the dark." And that's often attributed to Alice in Wonderland, but is not in any of the Alice in Wonderland books. So it has been attributed to the March Hare, kind of as saying to Alice, when you're, in the dark, I will sit with you, but it is not in any of the books, and so it can't be attributed to the books. So we have just left it as being an anonymous quote. If you come up with the actual person who has that quote and you send it to me, I would love it, because we have looked and looked. My testers looked. People went down a rabbit hole trying to find where that quote came from. I love the quote, we just couldn't find an attribution for it. And that's really hard as an English teacher. One more thing that I want to say about the I Will Sit With You shawl is that this is a really long pattern. And I do a checklist pattern, so all the rows are written out for you to check off as you go through. But if you are the type of person that can kind of gauge how things are going to move forward, you do not have to print the entire pattern. You can just choose the pages that you want to print, the pages at the beginning of each section. So section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it starts on the left end, it goes 1, 2, and then the big center 4, 5. So you can just print those sections. But all of my patterns recently have had less pictures in them to try to save space. And then the last picture of the pattern is an actual photo montage that we put together so that you can get lots of different views of the pattern. And so you could go just to that if you were looking for exactly, how something looked or how it worked. That is also an option. And then the pattern is entirely charted. So I'm just trying to flip through here. So the charts are each on a separate page. So here would be the page 1 chart. And once you get started with the written directions, I think most people could then look at the chart and say, oh, I see what I'm doing. And I'm doing this same thing. And it's growing by 1 stitch for 7 rows. And then I'm going to do it twice. And it's growing by 1 stitch for 7 rows. Oh, now I'm going to do it 3 times. It's growing by 1 stitch. So even though it may look like it's just this huge pattern that's super difficult, it is not at all. I just want to be clear. So I think it came out to be 14 pages long, but that's because there are 5 pages of charts. There's 1 page with just pictures on it. And then there are all the written instructions with the checklists for each of the sections. So every word, every pattern is written out. So you before you hit print, just pick the parts that you want. Don't print the charts if you're not going to use them. Don't print the written instructions if you're not going to use them. Because honestly, I'm not a chart lover. I like to see the words. I like to know what the actual stitch is. And then once I can get that down, then I can usually look at the charts and figure things out. And that's what I found with this, that you repeat the same thing over and over, and you're making one along the edge. The top is flat the whole way. And then you're adding 1 stitch every other row at the beginning, at the end of the row, and you put a stitch marker there to remind you. So, and it lines up. It's very simple to work. So I just want to be clear about that. Okay, the sweater of the week this week. This is the sweater that I had on Monday when Amber came. It was the first time I'd ever worn it. It was not finished. It looks like it's snowing outside. That's why I took a double take. This A-line sweater is knit seamlessly from the top down. Increases and decreases occur within the chevron columns. Work begins with the 16-inch circular. Switch to longer needles when there are too many stitches to fit. This is knit with a Koigu Painter's Palette Premium Merino, which is KPPPM. And I bought kits at America's Yarn Store, Webb's, when we went to Rhinebeck. And we were heading back to the airport, and we knew we'd go by, so we left early that day and we went to Webb's, and they had the Koigu mini skein palettes, and I bought 2 of the mini skein palettes so that you could do this sweater with it. The sweater came out in February of 2019. It's a $7 pattern. You could do this with any mini skeins. You would not have to use Koigu, but I think it really makes it look like a painting when it's done with that. It is knit in figuring weight, 32 stitches to 4 inches. In the sample shown, there are 9 different colorways. For each 50-gram hank, she had roughly 3 to 5 grams left of each. So that'll give you a good indicator. Only 3 people have made this project, so it was not well loved, and it's beautiful, right? Anyway, so there's your sweater of the day. Okay, a couple things here to finish up with, things I have to tell you. Intermittent fasting is going well for me. I am hanging in there. I watched a couple more videos of people who've lost a ton of weight on using intermittent fasting. If I have not mentioned it, the videos that I started watching were by Dr. Jason Fung, and that is F-U-N-G on YouTube. And a number of you have decided to join me in the quest to take off a few pounds. I really feel like if I could do some more exercise, it would go a little bit better for me, but I am not eating till 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I'm trying to be done at 7 at night. Now, caution to the wind on my birthday weekend, because all the people came and we went to all the places. So we ate out with my mom and dad on Friday, and then we ate out on Saturday, and then we ate out on Monday, and then I had cake and whatever, buntinis. And a couple of friends sent chocolate, which was delicious, so it wasn't like I didn't eat it. Amber brought milk duds and Swedish fish, which are my favorite. So I just am saying that I have to get right back on it. Right? I love this quote that I saw the other day: "Never eat more than you can life," by Miss Piggy. And I have been eating more than I can life. So that'll be my little motto going forward for the intermittent fasting. Say on Wednesday night this week, I'm going to be on Knit and Bolt as the featured spotlight on the artist. So if you have nothing to do on Wednesday night, I think it's 7 o'clock maybe, Central Daylight Time. And you can go to Knit and Bolt. They're a fabric and yarn store in Northeast Minneapolis. They currently have my trunk shows for Knit Words and the Plaid Blanket. And that is a free event that you can come to. I will be giving away a coupon code for the people who come for any of my patterns, I believe. And you have to sign up to get she'll send you the link. And it says $0.00 on the website. So it's not, you don't have to pay anything. You just get to. I would highly recommend that you try to purchase something from her for having me and doing this, but that's not necessary. Okay, I am also going to be doing a video today of how I fix the neckline of things. I've been asked to do it. It's been on my list forever. I'm going to get a sweater out. I'm going to do an overhead shot of how to take that piece of yarn and go around the inside of something and then cinch it up and tie a little knot, just so that people can actually see it. So you might be seeing a video tutorial before the next 2 weeks come up with that. And I just want to give you a heads up on that. Other than that, check out the I Rock Knitters hashtag, because I've been tagging stuff left and right. If you don't follow me on Instagram, go over and do that. I just recently am thinking about starting a knitting tips Instagram page. So I loaded it in, and it didn't want to take any of my titles. Knitting tips, knit tips, knitted tips, tips for knitting, knit tips. It didn't, none of them. They were all coming up as a bot for Instagram. And so then finally I found one that would work, knit_tips. And then I was talking to some friends, and they said, why don't you just do that on your I Rock Knits page? And I was like, I don't know. For some reason, I thought it should be a separate thing that people could follow. So now I'm debating on whether or not, so give me your pointers on that. Would you want to just follow a tips page? I've been collecting tips because in the future I would like to write a knitting tips book. And so I've been collecting tips from people, and you can give me your best tip in the comments. Tips for new knitters, tips for experienced knitters, the best tip you ever heard, all those kinds of things. I'm just going to collect them all in one place. I will give you credit if you want to include your first name and your last initial. But yeah, so I did do that, and then I also have the knitting exchange on there. So it might be too much to juggle 3, and I may need to put the tips just in my normal daily feed. I do Wednesday Wisdom, where I do a quote of the week for Wednesdays. Yeah, sometimes they're humorous. And then I do Friday Funnies, where I've collected cartoons, knitting cartoons for years. And so I put up a cartoon every Friday on my Instagram as well. And that should go automatically to Facebook, but now that I'm thinking about it, I should double check that. Make sure that it is. I kind of did the CORI'S Stories at the beginning this week, and I didn't really call it CORI'S Stories, but I'll go back and put a tag in. But I do want to share just quickly that we did get to go see May, and we did get her out to eat. It was quite a challenge. We had to have help getting her in and out of the car, but they had an orderly who came out, and they had a belt that they strapped around her to help us. She really struggled to get up on her feet. The one leg just doesn't have great feeling in it. She wanted to go so bad, and we tried and we couldn't do it. And so then they took her back inside, and they got a thing from physical therapy, a step, and then they got the belt, and then they came back out and tried again. And we did take her out to eat. She wanted to go to this place in town, and then we brought her, and then when we got done, we had been visiting, and she got choked up a couple of times, and I think that often happens when you get a little older, that your emotions are forward, and lots of people she knows have passed away recently, and so she did get choked up about that. But then she said, well, where can we go visit? And I said, May, this is it. Like, we don't get to go visit anywhere. There is nowhere else to go visit. This is how it is. Like, there's nothing open. It's a Sunday, and we took you to eat, and then that's all we get to do. We have to take you back now, and we're driving home. And
So I think as much as she understands the pandemic, she didn't really realize that people aren't going anywhere. And it was early. We went to eat early, so there was hardly anyone in the little restaurant we went to, and they let us just push her wheelchair right up to the table, and that worked really well. So yeah, I was glad that I got to hug her and see her, and she says she falls asleep a lot, and I think that's very true, that she just falls asleep. So, but thanks for all your well wishes around May as well. Let's do the hellos today. Hi to Kathy Evans, Carolyn Jans, Dorothy Rainey, Angela Jenkins, Jesse's Mom 12, Teresa Olson, Terry Monk, Chris Nugent, Julie Smith, George Ann Braden, Cindy Ehlers, Kathy B., Rachel Dobson, Martha Meyer, Pat Kohler, Donna Gilligan, Valerie Fisher, Timberly Whistle, Mary Case. I just read that wrong, Timberly. I think it's Weitzel, and I think it auto-corrected. Okay, sorry if that was not correct. Astrid Robitali, Frivolous and Frugal Dawn. Hi, Dawn. Chris S., Rochelle, Stacy B., Karen Mezzacapo, Peggy Bork, Terry Johnson. We have the same birthday, Terry. That was kind of fun. And a couple of you are the day before me, and somebody's the day after me. So we can all celebrate the birthday week together. Marilyn Longcoy, Lori Friedman, Carol Childers, Edina Cole, Donna Bauman, Brandy Stoker, Linda Bauman, Emily Saupersuth, Kat Montgomery, Barbara Birch, Crochet Creations, Melanie Cahoon, Melinda Zaccardi Rousseau, Glenda Bathgate, Danielle Brown, Christy Lakaitis, Luana Hendricks, World Peas Knits, Teresa Severia, Suzanne Selby, who I made late for work last week because she was watching a podcast. Sorry, Suzanne. And Karen H., who teared up last week when I told the gravy story. And Karen, I'm with you on that one. That woman needed me to buy the gravy. So many of you commented on buying the gravy. Some of you thought it was funny and kind of apropos, and then others of you found it sad and, meaningful in some way. But many of you commented on the buy the gravy. Therese Severia, Suzanne Selby. Oh, I already said those. Sorry. Move on. Quilting Chap, Pat House, Pam Bailey, Heather Wilson, Rachel Weisenstein, Connie, Janice Donaldson, Kathy Goodman, Mary Johnson, Janet Robertson, Cheryl Lacemaker, Susie Fab, Candy Harris, Bonnie Vandemark, who, I have to share this. The Friday before my birthday, I had to drive the trunk show to Knit and Bolt and drop it off. And near that yarn store is a little cafe on the corner. It's called Hazel's, and if you are in the Minneapolis area, you have to try Hazel's. But I had texted Kylie and said, hey, do you want me to meet me for lunch? I'll buy you lunch. And she said sure. And then my friend Bonnie said, hey, I have a little gift for you. I would like to drop it off. And we were going to see May, and I have to tell you all about that, but we were going to see May, and I said, I'm not home. That's not going to work. She said, okay, I have Wednesday and Friday off this week. And I said, well, I'm meeting my daughter for lunch on Friday, but why don't you join us? So she did, and that was lovely. And they both found out their INFJs, which is super rare. But look at what she made. And that one says, keep the fork. After I showed my little gnome, she made raspberry and orange gnomes for me. Look at the tops. Oh, they're so cute. I was just flabbergasted. She literally made a little sign, and it has the fork. Yeah, so cute, Bonnie. I had to share them because they're having a knit along. There's a mystery knit along for the gnomes, and we listened to the Knitting Guild on Tuesday night when we were sitting in my family room because they had the gnome designer talking, Sarah Shira, and we listened to her talk about all the different gnomes, and then when we got done, we were both like, oh, we both need to make more gnomes. So I had to show those, Bonnie. I don't mean to embarrass you. Mary B., Minnesota Susan, Cindy Ehlers, Stephanie Haberman, Janet Goyer, Shirley Clute, Robin Gasser, Kelly Mathern, Patty Skaggs, Jenny Davis, Rocky Mountain Penny, Emma Butcher, Christine Carr, Terry T.N., Jess Makenit, Ann D., Debbie McKenzie, Deb Vandermolen, Eileen Tomero, Sherry Palmer, Chantel McLeod, Birdlade 61. Hi to all of you, and a big hug. Come on in, get your hug from me. Oh, I got to hug people in real life, and it was amazing. So I hope you could feel that. You know I love you all. Thanks so much for watching. Keep your fork. Keep it colorful. You'll never regret ripping back. Don't complain with your mouth full. No green bananas, and buy the gravy. Bye. Love you all.